Today, I'd like to introduce Daniel from the Walt Disney Company. So Dan, can you quickly introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Daniel. I am a product manager. At Walt Disney Company. It's been an interesting time lately. It's so recently there's been the acquisition of Hulu. So now I work in a division that sort of is working across Hulu and Disney and some other brands. I work specifically in the ad platforms division. So it's showing ads to users.
Okay, excellent. And so you and I worked together at Adobe, worked on good old Premiere Express. And you obviously have an engineering background. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, as a kid, were you always on playing with computers, or is it something that happened a little bit later in your career?
Yeah, I think I was one of the. I mean, I've always been working with computers of some sort. So when I grew up, my first computer was a Commodore 64. I was, 6 or 7 at the time. And, I think my sister inputted a program. It was basically like printing something to the screen infinitely. And I just thought that was the coolest thing, and basically stuck with it. But I never was just playing around mostly for most of my childhood. I didn't really get serious till I needed to start making money. So right around when I was around 17, I was my father had moved away to a different part of the country, and I wasn't going to move with him. So I basically had to support myself. And that's when I decided, like, you know what, I gotta pull myself with my bootstraps and get working. I was working some dead-end cashier jobs. I was like, I gotta learn something. So luckily for me at this time, like the .com had basically just started. I taught myself a little HTML, and I got my foot in the door at this company down in Orange County. Basically, it's called First Source. Basically, they sold computer gear. It was like what was that company? CDW. It was like a competitor to CDW back in the day, where they just sold computer parts for way too expensive, and who knows. But so I started there. I got a job just writing. They call them basically just writing HTML snippets, and it was easy to move up because it was the time period when everyone sort of had jobs for less than 6 months, and no one knew how to do anything. So, I think within 3 to 6 months, I was building like their shopping carts and, building their coupon code system. Which, funny story, one of the first projects I worked on, someone had hacked my coupon code system to send themselves like a bunch of free laptops. So that was awesome.
Learning experience.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone makes mistakes. That's part of it, right? Like, yeah. And then so, yeah. I've always been interested in computers. I've always sort of been decent at it.
When you and I were working together at Adobe, you were pretty much, you and Chris, I guess the two of you were writing Premiere Express. So it was like that was sort of like you and Chris, your project. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Premiere Express was online video editing product that we created, and it was partner driven, if you remember. So we partnered up with PhotoBucket. I think we were trying to get into YouTube's doors.
YouTube, MTV, NFL.
After I left Adobe, I basically freelanced for about a decade. So around that time, I moved to New York, and I was. This is when I was trying to use my software, get into the arts, and I just wanted to try the arts out. And so I was basically just freelancing on the side. I did that for about 10 years, and then I actually ended up going back to Adobe afterwards. Our mutual manager with Premier Express had moved on to a different project called Primetime, which was basically online video and advertising, a bunch of products around advertising. And I've kind of been in advertising ever since. So I was with Primetime for a while, first as a consultant, and then as an engineer, and then later on down the road, I switched over to product management.
So you switched at Adobe, or was at Adobe?
Yeah,
right?
at Adobe. Yeah, I was at Adobe.
So how did that come about, just out of curiosity?
I think I needed a change. I think, Primetime was sort of at the, I don't want to call it at the end of its sort of heyday, but it was definitely on the decline, as far as, Primetime, when Flash Video was like a major player, like it was pretty much the only way to advertise online. So it was almost like a virtual monopoly in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And with the advent of like HTML5 and video and streaming services, and it was a decline, over many years. So the specific product that I was working on just wasn't getting a lot of attention. So I decided I wanted something different, a new challenge, and product management was the way to do it.
Just out of curiosity, would you have thought of, being so long in the engineering side, had you ever thought about becoming like an engineering manager versus like a product manager?
Yeah, I thought about it, but I feel like there's a couple different things that I wanted to level up. I knew I was deficient in like speaking to customers, like crisis management. Like I wanted to get better at like soft skills.
Mm-hmm.
Like the engineer, if I could be an engineering manager, I just felt it would be like kind of the same thing, but instead of, me complaining, it's like 7 people complaining. So I just I wanted to get better. And I didn't think like being an engineering manager would actually like help me get better.
Right.
I thought it would just be an extension of basically the same thing.
Right.
And it could be wrong.
With product management then, and with this product, since it was like a B2B product, I imagine you were working with your engineering team, and then also with companies that you were, I guess, other companies that you're working with to sort of deliver that service.
Yeah, exactly. So it was an ad insertion product, basically that some customers would use to insert ads in their stream, also perform a lot of the measurement pieces of it as well. And then, manage sort of customer requests, escalations, big events. So yeah.
Okay. And when you took that role, was there someone in product prior to your position, or was that position kind of created for you and then you kind of rolled with it?
Someone had just left like maybe a few months before.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an area that, so my expertise at that point had been in a lot of the client side,
mm-hmm.
like advertising products. So I had a lot of experience with like different devices and platforms, and and video players, what it takes to get ad insertion happening on the devices. I didn't have a really good sense on the software services side.
Mm-hmm.
So it made sense. It was another thing that made a lot of sense. It was just like an area that I didn't have a lot of expertise in, and so it was an area of growth for me.
Great. And when you started doing that, was there someone that was mentoring you, or how did you go about learning those skills that you talked about, those soft skills?
It was kind of trial by fire,
mm-hmm.
but I kind of prefer it that way, just because I know when I jump into something that I don't know, it's almost better for me because I know where I want to be. A lot like I think it's not really nice to have mentorship, obviously, but sometimes, at least for me, I looking back, I think it makes sense, or looking back, it was probably beneficial that I didn't have too much like hand-holding, especially with like in regards to like crisis management and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, you can't really be mentored there, you know, so much. Like it's there's something good about like having to own it, you know, own up to like, you know, something bad happened.
So then after Adobe, you remained as a product manager. So obviously it worked out for you. You liked it?
Yeah, I mean, like, so I guess the reason there's a little anecdote that I say, you know, when I talk about the move over to product, it's like, you know, the reason why I got sick of engineering was, you know, I was tired of a really stupid decision being made and us having to follow through with it. Like I wanted to be the one making the stupid decision. So yeah, I mean, there's aspects of it that I love. I do miss engineering a lot of times. But I think there's always aspects of, even in product management, of needing more technical folks. So there'll always be a place for me, I think, somewhere. I think especially in regards to like, you know, data design and, you know, there's gazillions of gigabytes of data flowing through pipelines now, and lots of it needs to be real time. So there's a lot of expertise still needed on the product side.
So do you think, like thinking back now, do you think you would ever go back to engineering?
Yeah, I think I plan on it.
You do? Okay.
I do. I really want to, but when I go back, I want to like own something. Like I want to have a lot of not control, but I want to work on something big and have a big piece of something. When that happens, I don't know if and when that's going to happen. I think it's tougher now because I think in the last, you know, 6-7 years, there's been a sort of move to commoditization of like engineering resources. So it's hard to make money now as an engineer, at least in the States. So unless you're like tip top architect, like I think the salaries fall off pretty quick. So at least, you know, in my experience, when I was looking for work, you know, product managers make more than engineers from what I've seen now. So whether it should be that way, I don't know, but it's ever changing, right? Like the tech industry. So, you know, a product manager barely existed, you know, 10, 15 years ago, and now, yeah, it's constantly shifting. So maybe it'll go back. Maybe we'll see more engineers, or more roles going into engineering the stateside, but I see it being more commoditized. So we're seeing a lot more, you know, engineering being used, you know, overseas and stuff.
Your day-to-day in terms of the job, is there one preference over the other in terms of how you're spending your time and sort of the quality of work?
I think there are definitely positives and negatives to both sides. I do miss, what I did love about engineering is like, you know, having goals for the week. There, you could really easily like meet your goals for the week, right? Like I want to do this, I want to build this, I want to do this. So, you know, you can, it was easier to see the fruits of your labor. Where I think with product management, it's a little bit harder to see the fruits of your labor. It takes a little bit more time. There are a lot more meetings. There's a lot more what ifs than there is like, you know, again, it's if product management is the why we should build something, and engineering is the how you build something, you get stuck in those what could we do, what should we do, and consolidating all the ideas that you have into like all right, here's the product plan. You know what I mean? That it's harder. There's more questions you have to answer before you can actually get into starting to build something. It's just different. I mean, the expectations are just different, right? And it's something I struggled with at the beginning. You just have to manage expectations accordingly. Like, when I was engineering, it's just much easier to like, I finished this thing. I finished these 3 things, and go me. And with product management, like you have to temper your expectation. Like, all right, I got an answer to this. I wasn't able to ship a product this week or a feature this week, but we got answers to X number of questions, and this will help us down the road when we develop the product. So it's just a difference in having to see more macro, I guess. And I love being more tied to the business and the business decisions and understanding a lot of the data, the business data that goes into making decisions, and understanding the products from more macro level, right? Like just, as an engineer, sometimes you hyper focus on a certain area and you don't have a well-rounded viewpoint of all aspects of a product. Because products now they're so complicated, right? Like there's so much that happens from the data side, the business intelligence side, like your client server. There's services everywhere, monitoring thing. I like being able to see the big picture, and I think the payoff is probably bigger, like when you do ship like big things, right? It's like, oh man, I really had my fingers in all these different areas, rather than just like, hey, I shipped XY feature. It's like you feel connected to the product.
Just out of curiosity, because I remember you were very strong in design as well as engineering, and now you're learning the business side. So how is that? How do you feel like in terms of, or is it as easy to give up as much on the design and engineering side when you're the product manager, when you work with those groups?
Yeah, I didn't really feel, there's like smart people everywhere. Like I didn't really feel a need to like tell people how to do their jobs. I think just because I was in engineering, it's like when people try to tell me how to do my job in engineering, I would definitely let them know. I didn't want to do that to other people. Like there's a they're there for a reason. They're hired for a reason, and and I think one thing, mistakes will happen. You know what I mean? I think it's about, for me, what's important is how the team like moves past mistakes, how you handle the mistakes. Like mistakes always happen from the product side, from the engineering side. Stuff happens, right? You can't foresee everything.
But if you saw a mistake sort of about to happen and you knew it was probably a mistake, as a PM, what would you do?
If you see something, say something.
Yeah.
I think that the whole idea of review is probably the best part about the change in tech in the last 15 years. Like product reviewing engineering specs, like engineering reviewing product requirements. And I think it was a dialogue that was a little bit one-sided when there wasn't product management. It was, so in a lot of ways, like when we were working like at Adobe back in the day, it was like business requirements, engineering, and there was no middle ground to sort of like,
it was just go.
Basically. And I think now there's a little bit there, depending on the company, but there's a little bit more pause before people start building things, right? And I think I think that's kind of the role the product manager in a lot of ways, like, hey, why are we building this? And let's talk about it. Like unit testing, right? Like that was still kind of, at least for me at the time, like I didn't really understand the benefits of it back then. But now that we have systems that are so, like our product in retrospect was tiny. You know what I mean? Like compared to the stuff that's being built today, like tiny. You know what I mean? So there wasn't a need for this like massive scalability on testing. And so I think engineering's changed so much for the better in that regard. I think why you build something, why there's so many processes around product has changed for the better too. Like, shouldn't build something just because someone thinks they have a good idea, right? Like it needs to be justified somehow. And there needs to be data supporting why you need to build X, Y, and Z, even the concept of user story, right? Like I want this so that I can, like that's a very useful thing to at least get everyone on the same page about, right? Like instead of, hey, just move that button, it'll be nice. You know what I mean? Like, so no, I think definitely tech has grown.
Dan, thank you for spending time with and sharing your story with the Japan CPO Association.
Thanks for having me. Have a nice day.